Hello YouTube, Scamp the Wolf here, back with another video for your viewing pleasure, and today is going to be a ranking video of the Taproot discography, now that I have all their albums. So, yeah, I'd pretty much say let's begin with the ranking. So, of course, you know Taproot is one of my favorite nu metal bands of all time, and so they're very underrated, and I think that this video should force you to check them out. So anyway, we're gonna get started. Now at the bottom of my ranking here, I have the episodes. This is probably pretty obvious because I don't really remember anything from this album as much, and what I do remember is not great, in my opinion. This is probably their weakest album, and you know, this was their final album for a number of years, about 11, before they made another album again. And when it comes to Taproot, I just don't listen to this album that much. I mean, yeah, there is like a concept, but one, I don't really know what the concept of the album is. It's not very well presented, I think, and I just really think there's not really enough highlights on this album. Maybe yeah, there's just, I don't know, this album is very mixed, in my opinion. Not their best album, easily their weakest, in my opinion. The episodes by Taproot, and actually, you know, like I'm gonna just put this back in here. It's like, you know, for the sake of it being like simple and all that stuff. Next up, we have their newest album, ironically, Scissors. And again, this is an okay album, I think. Like I said in the review for it. There are definitely good songs on this album. Victim Play, favorite song. Those two were good. There's a couple of songs like Imagining and Second Thought that I think are pretty fine, you know. The rest of the songs are like mixed, in my opinion. Like there's some like production choices that are just like However, there's a couple of songs I don't really care for, like We Control Our Destiny and No One Else to Blame. Those songs I don't really care for as much on this album. But, you know, this album is still okay. Like, for the sake of Taproot being back after 11 years. Hopefully things go up from here, I think. That's all I really have to say about this album. So, we're just going to put Scissors by Taproot as the second to last album on the list. Next up, we have Our Long Road Home, and again, one of their weaker albums where the first two tracks are basically the best, kind of like their last album. The rest of the album, I just don't really remember that much. You know, I don't really remember these songs. One, because this album wasn't made available on Spotify, and it hasn't been for a while. Like, you know, I wish they would put this on Spotify so I have a better opinion on it, but I do remember liking the first two songs on the album. So, that's pretty much the extent of that. So, yeah, Our Long Road Home, not one of their best, but not bad at all. I think this album is actually pretty solid, from what I remember. Now we get into what I would say the good stuff from Taproot is, and I was debating on where these two albums would be in the ranking. So, I was deciding whether this should be fourth or third, because you already know what my second and first are. You'll just have to wait and see. So, yeah, for the fourth album on my list, I'm going with Plead the Fifth, basically because this is the better of their more modern stuff that isn't their first three albums, I think. It is, like, I just think the ideas are, like, their best on this album, I think. Like it is more, like, radio friendly, I guess. Even though, like, I don't really know what to say. Like, this album, like, has like Taproot elements that like made them a good band to begin with, and this is probably the the best at them doing that in the modern age. Like you have Fractured, Everything I Said Was True, which is the single from the album, which is good. I think a lot of the riffs on the album are good as well. A lot of the musicianship is good on here as well. Um, a couple of standouts. Release Me, solid track. 911 Lost, Trophy Wi-Fi, those are good. Left Behind. Like, basically, those tracks are basically my favorites on the album. I think even the opening track, Now Rise, is pretty good. Kind of has elements of their first three albums, in my opinion. So, yeah, Plead the Fifth is the fourth best album from Taproot. Now we get into their first three albums, and it's pretty easy to say what my third favorite is in terms of their first three albums. I'm gonna go with Gift because one, this is their debut album. They didn't really have time to like develop their sound as much, even though like the stuff that they did have on here is pretty good. I will say, like, it just like they were destined to become better after this album, I think. Like, but there are still some really killer tracks on this album. Like, you have Smile, which is a good opening track, I think. Again and Again, of course, the single Believed and Meant to Be. Those are two underrated songs, I think, from Taproot. Same with Comeback. I just really enjoy those songs. And, of course, there's the track I, which is another single, another of one of their more revered songs, along with Again and Again. I think Again and Again and I are the two like most popular songs from this album, I think. There is some iffy stuff on here, like Emotional Times I'm not really crazy about. But like a lot of the other songs are good as well. Like the song Now, I forgot to mention, is also pretty good. So yeah, that's Gift. Pretty good album from Taproot. Actually, I would say it is essential if you like nu metal. Very good album from this band. And I'm just trying to like put this in where it should go. Alright, now we get to the final two albums, and I was debating on whether it would be one album or the other on the list, because I think both of these albums are fantastic. They are some of the best albums, I think, of the 2000s, like among several, and I was debating whether it would be like one album or the other. So you're gonna have to see what I did. And at the same time, it could be obvious, but it couldn't to some people. So I'm going to show you what my number two is. Number two, Blue Sky Research by Taproot. Amazing album. Blends their like nu metal sound with alt rock, and it's just a great album. I think this is probably their most like dynamic album, where they try a lot of different things and it works very well. I think like there's so much good on this album. I think like there's not really a bad song on this album. Like some of my favorites, Face Peeler, I mean, that track you gotta listen to. It's so good. And then So Eager is another one. That's an underrated song, I think. Along with tracks like She, Promise, Nightmare, Birthday, which is a single, Calling, which is another single. Honestly, the singles aren't like the meat of this album. There's like a lot of stuff. I mean, the album cuts are the meat here. Like Lust in the Woods, that's another good one, I think. There's a lot of good stuff on this album. Like, I could just name off tracks like I Will Not Fall For You, Violent Seas, Forever Endeavor, April Suits, and then the final track, Blue Sky Research / What's Left. Like, not one of the better songs on the album, to be honest, but it's still good, I think. But there's so much, like, good with this album that you can't really complain about anything on it. Like, I think it is one of the best albums of 2005, and it is one of the best albums in Taproot's discography. In fact, it is the second best in their discography. Excellent, excellent album. Definitely worth listening to. Now we get to number one, and number one is pretty obvious. Welcome. Easily one of my favorite albums of all time. Easily. Like, this is easily one of the best albums in nu metal, and this is the best Taproot album of all time. I just love this album so much. Fault is one of my favorite songs of all time. Same with Time as well. Like, those two tracks in particular, fantastic songs. I just love them so much. Same with Poem, Mine, great songs. Kind of like different from Gift in that it's still nu metal, but like they were starting to like pinch their way towards, they were pivoting their way towards kind of an alt rock-ish kind of style of nu metal. And that's what I love about this album, is that like it's different and it's good and it's well written, I think, and it's like impactful, and there's no bad song on the album, even though like songs like Breathe I'm not crazy about, but like I just like everything on this album. I think like it is their most impactful album that they've ever done. Like, there's so much good on here. Everything, very good song, very Alice in Chains-ish. If you like that kind of style, you'll like everything. Very grungy, like, as well, somewhat. Art, one of the more artistic, I mean, how coincidental that a song named Art would be the most artistic song on the album. But it is true, it is, like, very ambitious of a song, like lots of violins and stuff, very good. Then we get to like another ballad-esque track on here. Dreams is a fun one. I like that one. Like, I like what they did with that one. Very good. And then there's When Myself, like, which is a heavy, kind of a heavy meets like soft thing that they do. There's like heavy riffs, and then the verses are very melodic. Like, to be honest, like, at first, I wasn't crazy about this album because I had gotten into the band at the time, and I was used to Plead the Fifth, and I was like, this just sounds nothing like Plead the Fifth. This just sounds like, you know, vocal layering. It didn't hit me at that time. And then, like, just a couple months later, I decided, hey, why not check the rest of their discography out. And then I heard this album, then I heard Gift and all the others, and then I figured out, wow, this is very good. Like, this is some very excellent nu metal, and, you know, like, easily one of the strongest albums of this time period, of 2002. One of the best albums of 2002, for sure. This is a 10 out of 10 album, in my opinion. This is great. So, if you want one album from Taproot to listen to check out, let this be your first Taproot album, because I love this album. This is why, like, I'm a Taproot fan, and yeah, it's a great album. So, yeah, Taproot album Welcome at number one. So, I would like to know what your guys' lists are, so leave them down in the comment section down below, along with anything else you have. This is Scamp the Wolf, signing out. Take care.